Hello Battle Cats players, my name is Chan, so welcome to my guide and thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of our cat breakdown series. Today we're looking at a relatively interesting cat for a few different reasons. We're looking at Mr. Not Mr. anything in particular, just Mr. This is the first of a fairly decent amount of units that are incorporated into other Pono spin-off games. This particular character is a call out to the Mr. series of games made by Ponos. However, for me personally, it gives me very strong kind of early 2000s flash game kind of vibes. I'm sure a few of you know what I'm talking about in relation to that. Mr. is a special cat, unit ID number 11, and you can purchase him for 160 cat food after completing India in Empire of Cats Chapter 2. I was asked about this in a previous video, so I figured I'd bring it up now. On the subject of spending cat food for special cats, every once in a while, the special cats will go on sale. I've tried to look into it a few times over the course of even me playing this game, and then again before making this video. I have no clue how frequent these sales take place. I think the last time I remember one happening was for like an anniversary related event. So I think Ponos just does them every once in a while. If you do happen to be playing this game while a special cat sale happens, I mean, you'd be crazy not to take advantage of it. However, for the vast majority of your gameplay, I don't really think that's going to be a viable option, and it might just be best to take a look at the gotchas you have and figure out what special cats you would need to offset kind of the holes in your lineup, for lack of a better term. In any case, with that intro out of the way, let's move on to Mr.'s evolution. Mr. follows the exact same progression as all of the other special cats we've covered up until this point, and his description reads, Mr. is here from the popular Mr. series. The series has trained his legs for speed and he can shoot down all the enemies. At level 10, he evolves into Super Mr. Mr. is here from the popular Mr. series. The series has trained his legs for speed and he now has a bazooka. Bam. That really is the only difference between his character. His run animation is a little bit different as well, but that's just to compensate. So he goes from like a AK-47 or like some kind of an automatic rifle to a bazooka. And after getting him to level 20 or beyond and partaking in the Mr. Awaken stage, he evolves into Hyper Mr. and this is his true form. Mr. from the world famous Mr. games. He surges towards enemies, beating them down with a homemade boxing glove gun, and that is the change. He gets like a boxing glove on a gun. It's kind of like a Looney Tunes-esque kind of weapon, I suppose, if you want to look at it like that. It's always strange to me when Ponos totes their own games as being great. Kind of reminds me of like that, like, I don't even know how to really describe it. It's like this meme of like what rappers do when they talk about like how great their lives are. It's kind of like they're sucking themselves off, right? I don't know if that's like appropriate for this channel, but you know, like the meme with like the elephant using it. Anyways, it just reminds me of that. It's kind of funny. As for the Mr. Awaken stages, they're titled Mysterious Evolution. There's 2 stages to the level. The first being an expert, the second one being an insane. Both cost 150 energy, and they are available the 19th of any month from 700 hours to 1400 hours. So that's 7 in the morning till 2 p.m. or the 20th day in any month from 1700 hours to 0 hours. So that is 5 o'clock until midnight. His first appearance was over on May 3rd of 2015. Pretty cool. In case you are curious, those days of the month are applicable for both the English and Japanese version of the game, in case any of you were curious. Now that you have a pretty good grasp on his evolutions, now let's take a quick look at his performance and go over some pros and cons. Mr., first and foremost, is a rusher and a melee unit. So he moves quick and he deals up close. We've actually covered another cat with this same combination, that being Cow Cat, and they just have good movement speed, and melee units aren't really the best, and as we will discuss at a later date, this is one of Mr's shortcomings. Under pros, however, area of attack, always nice to have. High attack speed, great. And high speed, great as well. Under cons, short attack range, did touch on that a little bit earlier. Low health and attack power, and somewhat expensive. In case you're curious, his chapter 1 cost is 550 cents, so 550 cents. Chapter 2, 825 cents. And chapter 3, 1100 cents. So he is definitely not the most cost-effective unit in the game, and it is kind of upsetting that he's a rusher as well. Ideally, a cost-effective rusher is great because you can get it out of the gates early and get it down the runway. That being said, assuming you have all of your treasures and assuming you have upgraded your worker cat and cat wallet, getting to those numbers isn't very difficult, but you know, why add one more layer of complexity when you don't need to? And as far as additional things to talk about, he does get the zombie killer trait once he evolves into his true form. Now, what is zombie killer? We haven't really talked about it at all up until this point, but a zombie won't revive if a zombie killer does the final blow, which is indicated by a blue flash with a unique sound cue. The visual and sound effects from this ability will present even if a zombie can't revive anymore. Most anti-zombies have this ability, which is completely appropriate as somewhat powerful zombies have infinite revives. Zombies are a pain in the neck. They're always kind of a pain in the neck. The issue that most new and experienced players will face with zombies is the revival mechanic. If you're not familiar, when you destroy a zombie the first time, he will just turn into like a pile of bones. And while in that state, your cats will not target or do damage to them. So your cats will just walk over them and expose the kind of more softer parts of your lineup, so you're usually your DPS units, right, to now being damaged when the zombie revives. Now that we have a really good grasp on Mr's performance, let's move on to his strategy and use case and talk about some gameplay. In the early game, Mr is really, really good. The good movement speed combined with a good attack speed and like just short animations in general, as well as having area attack, really does lend himself to be a get out of jail free card, so to speak. If for whatever reason you've messed up and you have enemies encroaching on your base, spam out a couple meat shields and then just send Mr out swinging, and it will make the run a lot easier. However, there is an issue in the way that he gets outclassed in the mid to late game. And he's outclassed by a unit called Crazed Cow Cat. This is a running theme throughout a lot of these earlier videos. The crazed variants of cats are really just better in every way, so it doesn't really make sense to ever go with anything other than them. Crazed Cow Cat is just a better rusher. It moves faster, it's stronger, it does more damage. However, even in the mid to late game, there are some potential uses for Mr. if you decide you really like the unit. The first being the Biohazard cat combo, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but it is one of the better cat combos in the game, or at the very least one of the more efficient ones, and you can use him to 4-star a couple of stages, and there's some utility in that. As far as his true form's concerned, the zombie killer is fun, and there are some stages that it completely trivializes. However, for some of the more difficult zombie stages, there's a caveat to it, and that caveat is that Mr. has to deal the final blow. So unless you can guarantee that, having the zombie killer trait doesn't do anything. And unfortunately, because of his cost and recharge time, he's not a great spammable unit. And even then, later in the game, you unlocked a bunch of different cat cannons, and there's one that's dedicated to dealing with zombies specifically, and if you're using that, then there really is no utility benefit to using Mr. At least not as far as I can tell. Feel free to disagree with me on this, but I just don't see a ton of use cases for him that other cats and abilities aren't just better suited for, and many of them aren't even that hard to get a hold of. So I don't know, it is one of those weird things. There's an argument to be made that if you're prepared to invest enough into his talents, and we will talk about him later, he can see some use cases, but NP is one of those currencies that you really don't want to be wasting if you can help it, as it's not the easiest to grind out, and there are better uses for it than just investing into trivial units, really. Alright, now let's take a quick look at his cat combos here. Mr. only has 3 cat combos, so it's not, to call him a combo slave isn't accurate. However, Biohazard is far and away one of his better ones. It involves Zombie Cat and Mr., and it's a research power-up, the first I actually think we've ever talked about on this channel. And it reduces cat recharge time by just shy of a second. It's like 0.8 seconds. And I know what you're thinking when you hear that. Less than a second? That can't be worth it. Well, firstly, not entirely true, but secondly, the way this combo really shines is when you use it with Bony Bone, which is a cat combo we haven't talked about yet, but we're likely going to. It involves Skelecat, which is the true form of Zombie Cat, and Necromancer Cat as well. And it is an identical cat combo. So it's another 2 cat combo that reduces the recharge time of cats by about a second. In Biocats, there is a minimum recharge time, and that is 2 seconds. So no matter what you do, no matter how much you invest in a research cat, no matter what cat combos you use, 2 seconds is kind of your minimum. The only exception to that is to use one of the cat god abilities for cat food, and I do it sometimes in videos as just kind of like a way to prove how powerful units can be if you stack them, but for the layman, I wouldn't really recommend it. In any case, to shave 2 seconds off of your unit spam ability can be a massive difference maker in stages. It is one of those compounding effects because it removes time off of each of your units. So this allows you to spam more powerful units, which is just, it can trivialize some stages very easily, depending on the gacha units you have access to and the considerations with the stage. I've brought it up before, money is very rarely an issue, the real issue is research speed. Now let's move on to his next cat combo, which is Bazooka Bros. Bazooka Bros is a cat cannon power-up which increases the cat cannon power by 20%, involves Super Mr. and Red Riding Mina. I don't like these. I've spoken on plenty of other videos. There are very few stages where using your cat cannon is a difference maker, and on those stages they involve such frail enemies that even a minimally upgraded cat cannon should be able to do the job. I just can't think of a reason to rely on your cat cannon. It's just, if you are, there's a more fundamental issue with how you're building your team, so it's better to just address that versus worry about spamming your cat cannon. And up next, and lastly, I suppose, we have Sweep the Arena. This involves Mr. as well as Raiden. This is a cat cannon recharge up, so the cannon will recharge 5 seconds faster. This I actually don't mind. It's not useful in every stage, but there are a few stages where using your cat cannon, at least in terms of some of the effects you'll unlock, is great. As far as like raw DPS, probably not, but I would take faster recharge time over more damage every single time, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I don't think that's a very controversial opinion. Naturally, if you disagree, put it down in the comments section, but that really are all of Mr.'s cat combos. And yeah, there's not too much to really talk about here. The best one is Biohazard, and it's not even because Mr. is inherently good in there, it's more so because research power is really useful in this game, and the fact that Zombie Cat has another 2 cat combo with the exact same effect make it stackable. So I just think that really is the way to go. Everything else on this page is kind of meaningless. Now I'm just gonna go over some of the graphs of Mr. here while just reading out some trivia. This unit is the main protagonist of the Mr. series of apps made by Ponos, and he is also the first cat unit introduced to not have a cat face, or at least a cat face in all of its forms. He's also one of the very few units to really use guns. I think there's only like maybe 4 or 5 units that like use like actual guns. There are quite a few that use like laser guns and like missiles and things of that nature, but there aren't really a ton of them, at least that I can think of on the top of my head, that use guns. There's not a ton of other trivia to go over, so I just want to make a quick like shout out here. Like, thank you so much guys for hitting 200 subs so quick. I wasn't expecting this channel to grow nearly as quickly as it has, so that's really nice to see. Everyone's been super nice in the comments as well. I really urge you guys to put any questions or concerns you have down there. We have a really good and very knowledgeable community, and They catch me making small mistakes all the time, so they really do know their stuff inside and out. Anyways, let's now take a look at Mr.'s talents. These are, of course, accessible at level 30. Firstly, knockback. Adds a 3% chance to knockback. Improves by 3% per level up to 30%. Eventually getting to the point where, in theory, 1 in every 3 hits will have a knockback onto it. The total cost to do this is 215 NP, so it definitely is not cheap. Outside of that, immune to freeze, which is what it says it is. Cost is 75 NP. Up next, Warp Blocker, which makes this unit unwarpable. By this point in the game, you should have figured out what warping is, but if you're brand new to the game and you're just preemptively viewing these videos, then warping is something that a lot of the alien enemies can do, where they will essentially cause your unit to disappear for a little bit and then reappear later on the stage. It is frustrating because it involves giving up the line, and it's just annoying. It's a very frustrating enemy ability to deal with. There are ways of dealing with it. Using warp blockers is probably the most effective. Then you have the standard defensive and attack buff, which increase respectively by 8% per level up to 80% for a total cost of 125 NP. Interestingly enough, once you start investing into some of Mr.'s talents, he actually becomes viable in very niche circumstances. As far as priority goes, the defense and attack buffs are basically required. Outside of that, secondarily is knockback, and then the immunity and warp blocker really don't matter. I can't think of a single reason you would want to use Mr. on any stage with warping enemies, or enemies that can cause warping. There's just not a lot of... There are better units. There are better units in every way that also have that ability. Many of them you do not need to invest NP into to get that ability either. Where Mr. really shines is certain zombie stages, and there's a disadvantage to even using him on those, and that is that his range is awful. So you can't use him like you would a traditional DPS or traditional anything. You have to use him as almost a emergency unit. So the idea is, on some stages there are burrowing enemies, and burrowing zombies have got to be one of the most frustrating enemies to deal with for your first time, because they just go through your waves, and if you're spamming out cats, eventually you'll hit a point where you can't send out any more cats, and it's a very frustrating stage to deal with. And then outside of that, there are Zyclones, which Mr. also does pretty good against, and in both of those cases, Mr.'s use case isn't really in stacking up. So essentially what would happen is you'd have a zombie enemy burrow underneath your main lineup of enemies, or your main lineup of cats rather, and then you would send Mr. out as a way to, with his knockback ability, push that zombie back to where it is now in front of your main wall of cats. And in doing that, as well as the Zyclones kind of keep pushing them back, in doing that you can essentially prevent your lineup from being just obliterated. So there is a use case for him in there. I'm not saying you need to use him in those circumstances, but if you have already invested heavily into Mr. and you're looking for a use case for him in certain mid and end game stages, this is that use case. Outside of that, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. If you can, put it down beneath in the comments section. But I think that about wraps up this video. I do just want to quickly just thank everyone again. Obviously your support means the world to me, and obviously I'm going to keep doing my best to make these videos. If I explain anything wrong or it could explain things better, let me know. I take criticism as much as I can, and I just keep reapplying it to make these videos better and better as the series progresses. And if need be, I may be open to revisiting older videos on like newer patch releases and just smoothing them over then. I don't know. Let me know if you guys think that's a good idea or not. In other news, starting fairly soon, I'm going to start uploading different types of short content. Currently, I'm just releasing 11 rolls, but there's going to be some more variation coming out soon, as well as some interesting stuff on the community posts. So just make sure you like and subscribe so you can be a part of that. I would love to have you, of course, and just like and subscribe anyways for Cat God's blessing. Outside of that, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Any questions, comments, or concerns, put them down beneath in the comment section, of course, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.